The federal government has just announced its new and sweeping piece of legislation to stop online harms. Now, if there's anything that I am an expert in, it's getting hate online. And so this is a piece of legislation that has been pretty anticipated. The Liberals promised to do something about online harms back in 2021 when they were first reelected, I guess, or last reelected. And they said that they were going to put something forward within the first 100 days of their mandate. That was obviously a ridiculous promise because this is a massive, massive issue. And they have finally just released the bill. So it's called the Online Harms Act, and it touches a lot of different areas of the online harms world. Most of the reporting that we've seen focuses on the things that are going to be created. So new regulatory bodies, new positions appointed, and I'm going to talk about those. And it talks a lot about child exploitation and remedies for child bullying, this kind of thing that might happen online. So as I promised today in the Daily News podcast, I am giving you a rundown of what I think about this. Okay, so I want to start with the most concerning to me of this legislation, and that's the pieces that touch the criminal code. Okay, so one of the changes that did not get covered in mainstream media, but did get picked up on by at least one journalist, I saw CBC's Kate McKenna write about this. The new legislation seeks to increase the punishment for inciting genocide to be from 5 years right now, maximum in prison, to be life in prison. Okay, now what is genocide inciting genocide? It means, quote, promoting acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part any identifiable group, namely killing members of the group or deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction. So that's going from 5 years to life in prison, which, I mean, you're not going to stop this by giving higher and higher prison sentences. That's not what's going to stop people from doing whatever it is here you're trying to stop. And it's a bit strange. Like there doesn't seem to be any scale, right? Inciting a genocide. No genocide has happened because a random Canadian has called for it. Genocides are highly organized by states and military and the business world operating together to, eradicate an entire group of people. And you in a different country, and normally we're talking about stuff not happening in Canada because, I mean, inciting genocide in Canada of who is not exactly something that has really been a thing that people are doing. Of course, there's hate crimes conversations. There's violent rhetoric around people that people hate. That genocide is like kind of sophisticated and kind of requires the state bureaucracy to carry out. So if you're found guilty of inciting genocide, whether online or in real life, you will now face 25 years in prison. Up to. Like that's the same as like if you kill someone and eat them. I mean, like it's like the scale seems completely off. And we just saw in the last couple of months all of these conversations about whether or not we're allowed to say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, because some people are arguing that that's incitation of genocide. Now, the really ironic thing about this is if you look at the definition, right? Killing members of the group or deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction. The Canadian state is absolutely involved in many campaigns that are looking to deliberately inflict on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction. Not the least of which to mention in Canada is colonization. And not the most obvious to mention, of course, is our involvement, our support for the state of Israel currently conducting a genocide. So, I mean, these are really political and difficult kind of to navigate political terrains. And then somehow in the criminal code, this law is going to now make it up to 25 years in prison if you incite genocide. Okay. There's been other levels of punishment that have been added as well to the criminal code in this law. I mean, of course, it's a proposed bill. It hasn't been passed yet. Under the public incitement of hatred section. So not genocide, but, hatred. And they've got new definitions of hatred, which are, pretty normal definitions of hatred. You can read them if you'd like, but for me, they're like, yeah, that's hatred. The penalties have gone from either from an indictable offense of maximum 5 years in prison, and that's going up from 2 years in prison. So again, we're seeing the Canadian government dealing with hatred and under the auspices of online hatred, using the prison system, which is not going to do anything, because that is not like, no one is doing hate crimes and is like, ooh, I better stop doing hate crimes. I might be in jail for 3 more years. So, again, this tough on crime stuff, it doesn't work. And we should be very, very critical of these changes to the criminal code. Now, it also adds a hate crime designation, including a definition of hatred. Now, hate crimes is popularly something that we would talk about in Canada as that person did a hate crime or a hate crime just happened, but it wasn't actually as itself in the criminal code as a thing. It was crimes of hatred towards people and written in different ways. And so now that has been added to the criminal code, which is probably a good thing to get the criminal code to speak in a similar way to the way that we popularly talk about these things. Now, the thing that I find perhaps the most worrisome or most like potentially dangerous for, to catch people up in weird kind of political ways is there's a new provision that allows someone to present information to a judge that says that they are worried that someone else might commit a hate-related offense. Any person can, quote, lay information before a provincial court judge if the person fears on reasonable grounds that another person will commit an offense under these hate crime genocide sections. If a judge agrees that someone might commit a hate crime, they can then enter for that person to be court monitored for 12 months. They have to enter into recognizance to keep the peace. If that person is previously convicted, that recognizance can last for 2 years. Now, if the person refuses to enter into recognizance, well, then there are a whole bunch of different things the courts can do, including applying a court-ordered curfew, forcing the individual to have an electric monitoring device, or submit, quote, a sample of bodily substance, unquote, to a probation officer. Now, why is this something that I'm zeroing in on as being concerning? Well, this is not someone has done a hate crime. We are worried someone might do a hate crime. And intervening like this, rather than finding non-criminal justice interventions at that point in someone's existence, is just going to further criminalize people who already are criminalized by the state. Like, let's be clear. This is not going to be used against neo-Nazis. Neo-Nazis, as it is in Canada, have been operating openly, doing their fight clubs, doing their hate crimes, and have not been destroyed or taken apart or punished all that much by sections in the criminal code that already could have punished them. And so what we're going to see is I don't know, like, is it going to be the people who are desecrating neo-Nazi cemetery headstones then that get called hate crimes? Are they the ones that are going to be caught up by this legislation? Or, one person's genocide might not be another person's genocide, right? Genocide is one of these very difficult terrains sometimes to navigate. I think a lot of times it's clear who's in the right and who's in the wrong, but there are going to be Canadians that have connections to different sides of the issues that are going to be talking about things in ways that will violate this the new Online Harms Act. I think specifically CIJA, the Canada Israel Jewish Affairs Committee. I mean, they are fully advocating for things that can be on the most basic reading of the legislation, advocating for genocide. Are we going to see someone from the Canadian Israel Jewish Affairs group face 25 years in prison? Of course not. Might we see a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old who's being radicalized online face similar kinds of face similar kinds of penalties? Maybe. That's, I think, where the risk is. And it completely sidestepped the core and the root issues of why someone might be radicalized in that way. Now, there's a couple of other changes too. There's changes to the Human Rights Act that will expand the number of members of the Human Rights Tribunal from 18 to 20, and will increase the statute of limitations to bring a case against Canada's child pornography laws from 2 years to 5 years. So increasing that amount of time that you can actually make a complaint. And the big parts of this legislation is that it creates a Digital Safety Commission of Canada. The commission will be made up of 3 to 5 commissioners. There will be a Digital Safety Ombudsman of Canada, whose job will be to gather information related to online safety, highlight issues, and direct users to resources, and a Digital Safety Office that's going to be led by a CEO. It's, part of this is going to be just making things that are already happening codified in law. So digital providers have to give people a possibility to complain about hateful content. They have to act when there's hateful content, things that the biggest companies are already doing. And as I saw one commenter, I think it was Michael Geist, say, the devil really will be in the details of this and the application of the biggest parts of these new laws. How will a digital commissioner intervene in some of the stuff that we're seeing online? Will I be able to send the hateful content that I receive all the time to the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal? That seems like such a bizarre bureaucratic waste of everybody's time, frankly. It'll be interesting to see how this debate plays out. I don't think that there's enough in this law to as you say in French, to rip up your shirt and be super mad about it. But it does seem like a lot of money into some parts of trying to police the online space and the online world that won't probably do very much. So that's what to pay attention to. I'm much more concerned about those criminal code changes that will lead to the incarceration of more people. And I'm also very concerned that it seems clear that the federal Liberals are unsure about what to do. And this is not like a surprising thing that they're unsure about what to do. When you live in a society where corporations have complete control of the worlds in which they operate, we know that Facebook is still blocking Canadian news to be like, fuck you, Canada. Google obviously was threatening to do the same thing. They have total control, and the Liberals are trying to do things that will not make Meta and Google and Twitter or whatever be like, fuck you, Canada, we're leaving, but instead being like, yeah, we can do this. We'll appoint our one person to be in touch with Canada's Digital Safety Office, to have that direct line in. That's part of the legislation as well. But it all sidesteps the real issues, which is that rising radicalization is driven by social conditions, and the social conditions in this country, everything from the affordability crisis to the food cost price crisis to the crisis of finding quality work, is what's driving people into radicalized spaces. The loneliness crisis, the crisis of people not having connections with one another without being able to intervene and be like, man, you okay? You're like saying a lot of weird shit lately. That is the real crisis. And we're not going to jail ourselves out of this problem. If you look at the horrible hate crimes that have led to people being murdered in this country, people were consuming, thinking specifically of the shooter in the Quebec City mosque. He was, radicalized, yes, online, primarily by American mainstream right-wing pundits. He wasn't consuming the furthest extreme stuff. He was consuming the Ben Shapiros of the world, the Rebel Newses of the world, and the social conditions of his life primed him to be willing to take up some sort of violent act. And this was someone who was inspired to take up a violent act since the age of 16, when he was inspired by high school shooters. It's the same thing for the attacker in London, where this is another individual who's radicalized online and seeing online stuff that maybe the Online News Act will be able to kind of mitigate, but probably not. Especially because there are necessary provisions that protect private communications. Private communications are a protection from you being spied on for everything from, these hate crimes, but to also even child pornography. And so there is that balance between protecting someone's personal conversations and privacy with how the law is trying to clamp down, I guess, on the propagation of hateful materials. So that's my take. I don't doubt that we're up for a couple of really irritating weeks of discussion around this. I imagine the conservatives will call this stuff an overreach, though their tough on crime stuff is, you can see their fingerprints all over how the liberals have managed this to try and probably make it palatable for the conservatives. I obviously doubt that the NDP is going to raise any concerns about the increased incarceration that's tied to this bill. But do not forget that online harms are not going to be going away just because the federal government has created a digital office of online security. It risks becoming another useless government agency that will be a waste of money, that won't actually be able to do what they're telling Canadians it will be able to do, and nothing will really change. I'll finish by saying, watch out for an article that I have coming out on the where are we at with online harassment of journalists, which is also something that I think people expected to see in the Online Harms Act, and there's literally nothing, which is kind of interesting. But it's a big feature that I've written for JSource, and it will be out in the next couple of days, which I'm super excited about. But it goes through some of the difficulties in this world, which are that we're fighting a proxy war. These are proxies for the real issues. And the liberals are so involved and so implicated in those real issues that unless they make radical changes to their approach to governing and radical changes to their favoritism of the corporate world over our general well-being, then nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. And in fact, it might just get worse. If you like this video, please subscribe, and also do me a huge favor, share it. Share this video. I often check to see what stuff's being shared and where things are going. And most of the stuff shared about me is complete shit, is just calling me names and saying that I hate people. And it's it sucks. So if you like these videos, please do me a favor and share them, and get your friends interested in the Sandy and Nora news thing. And I would love that a lot.